Hello, everybody. My name is Jamie Nickel, and I'm head of community at CultureIQ, which is a platform that helps companies understand and strengthen their culture. And we're bringing this webinar to you today. First of all, thank you, everybody, for joining us. Really excited about this. And can everybody see the slides and hear me? Please send a chat if you cannot. Okay, so we're looking good. Now, we're recording this webinar, so we'll be sending out the slides and recording after. It will have the links to the resources mentioned throughout, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions about that, because we want to make sure that we're providing all of the citation and information to help you with your innovation process as well. Also, feel free to submit questions throughout the webinar. We'll be getting to as many as we can during our Q&A session after. So now on to the fun stuff. Today, we're going to hear from Rea Abrahams, who's a culture strategist at CultureIQ. She'll be covering some research and best practices around innovation. And we're also joined by Greg Kuchcik, who is the VP of Human Resources of Zeeto. Zeeto is a leader in traffic monetization technology, and they're also a top company cultures winner in 2015, and they had one of the highest innovation scores out of any of the participating companies. So it's really an honor to be able to learn from them today. Rea, why don't you take it away from here?
Sure, thanks, Jamie. First off, I think we are having some trouble seeing your slides. I think I'm seeing the GoToWebinar slide viewer.
How's that?
Oh, there we go. Perfect. Thanks, Jamie. Um, Great. So I'm very excited to be here today along with Greg from Zeeto. We had a bit of a pre-chat before this, and Zeeto's really doing some exciting stuff that we're going to hear about today. My goal for this webinar and all of our webinars at CultureIQ is for you to walk away with some tangible things that you can bring back to your companies to improve your innovation. So for today, sort of three key areas. First, what is an innovative culture? Just to level set on what we mean by innovation. Second, how to encourage new ideas through your organization. And third, how to move ideas through the organization once you have those new ideas. And the way this webinar is set up is we'll talk a little bit about the research behind each of these topics, and then we'll pass it off to Greg from Zeeto to give us a tangible example that he's seen successful at his organization. If you want to move. Thank you, Jamie. Okay, so first off, what is an innovative company? This is the way that CultureIQ defines it for our customers. So we kind of break it up into two areas. First, an innovative company encourages new ideas, and second, an innovative company is able to move those ideas through the organization. And you can see that that's how we broke up this webinar to talk about encouraging and then talk about moving those ideas. We like to split this up because some of you may find at your company that you're not open to new ideas at all. There's no forums, it isn't encouraged. The climate at your company might feel like, oh, we stick with the status quo and do our best in those areas. So this first part of the webinar will be especially helpful for you. But some of you might feel like, you know, new ideas are encouraged at my company. My manager always wants to hear my thoughts. The CEO really encourages them, but I don't really understand how to move ideas through the organization beyond just mentioning it to my manager. So hopefully both of these areas will be helpful for you, but think about your organization and where some of the challenges lay now. If you want to go to the next slide, Jamie. All right, so to kick us off with our foundational discussion, these are 6 building blocks of an innovative culture, and this is one of the frameworks presented actually by MIT Sloan, and I think this is a really helpful framework to use. So when you look at this slide, take a second and think about which one of these 6 building blocks immediately jumps out to you. Which one is your company doing well, or which one or two? Which one or two is your company maybe having some issues around, and where you'd like to see improvement? To provide a little background on these 6 building blocks, so MIT Sloan conducted a study of 759 companies, and they basically came up with these 6 things saying that truly innovative companies have at least one of them. And historically, companies have paid a lot of attention to the 3 on the left. They're tangible, they're measurable, they're easy to gravitate to when thinking about making a change. But the ones on the right are just as important and, in fact, can feed into the building blocks on the left. So the article had an example that I really liked because, like I said, Greg and I are going to try and bring as many examples as possible. But basically, one of the examples they used in the article was about IDEO as a company and how they try and have their work model children playing. And that might sound silly when you first think about it, but if you think about how children's play, they work together. They're hands-on. They role play, different characters in their fantasy lands. Kids really have innovation, right? So IDEO focused on how can we implement or incorporate those sort of children playing behaviors into their organization. And they've really seen success in their creativity and their innovation because of it. Okay, so moving on to the bulk of our webinar, now that we all kind of have an understanding of what we mean by innovation. Again, first we'll talk about encouraging new ideas, and then we'll move into how to actually push ideas through the organization. Thanks. Okay, so encouraging new ideas. I love this quote. Being prolific actually increases originality because sheer volume improves your chances of finding novel solutions. Sometimes we think, we're going to eventually not have good ideas if we're all just thinking of as many ideas as possible. But actually, in a recent experiment by some Northwestern University psychologists, which is my alma mater, they found that initial ideas people generated were actually the most conventional. I don't know if any of you guys have played the brick game where you think about, okay, you have a brick. What are all the things you can do with this brick? We've done this on some teams I've been on. And the first things people say are like, oh, I could build a house or a building. And it isn't until the end where people are like, oh, well, I can put it under my pillow and use it as a baseball bat if there's an intruder, right? You get the creative stuff after you work through the things that first come to mind. So a few thoughts on this, and then we'll get some of Greg's examples. But first, 3 things. So first, provide an outlet for new ideas and an environment that encourages them. So when you think about your work environment at your company, when you bring up an idea, what are the reactions you receive? Do your team members support you? Does your manager support you? Or are people immediately saying you're wrong, or no, you don't have a right to give your idea? What is the work environment that you're in? And secondly, do people have the ability to share their thoughts anonymously? If that's the case, do you have a suggestion box or some sort of confidential way that people can provide their feedback? Secondly, push ideas beyond their initial pass. Like I was just saying, evidence says that until there are 200 ideas on the table, which is a lot of ideas, you're not gonna decrease, right, in quality. So you might as well just get that whiteboard up there and start putting everything down. There's no bad ideas in a brainstorm. And then third, making sure employees feel comfortable sharing and failing. And this is something that Zeeto does extremely well. But one of the things that we do here is something called brain writing, and this is seen as especially effective for leadership. And the thought is, if everyone is sharing their ideas in front of everyone else, you might create groupthink, or you might impact people's willingness to share. But if you really have the opportunity to think by yourself first and jot down a few of your ideas on a post-it note or whatever before sharing them in a meeting or with your team, you're going to have higher quality ideas and people will be more likely to share them. So again, a tangible thing you can bring to your next team meeting. But okay, thinking of examples, Greg is on the line and he's here to share with us some of the things that go really well at Zeeto. So Greg, we would love to hear from you.
Great, thank you, Rea. Thanks for having me. Happy to discuss. I like your last line. It says, don't be afraid to fail. Zeeto does that extremely well. Hopefully that tagline doesn't catch on too much or we're in trouble. But anyways, so forum meetings. First one, specific, I'm trying to come at this with specific examples. And one of the things we do really well is we'll bring forums on any topic, any idea. Recently, we hired a CTO. It was probably it is the most important hire we were going to make this year, 2016. We invited everyone, literally everyone in the entire company. We said, hey, he's here. He has a free half an hour. Come on in, ask him whatever you want. And there were a few silly questions. And that was kind of the point. Get everybody involved, get everybody to see the face of who could potentially be our next CTO, kind of break down that barrier from, the C-level down to the bottom. And that worked really well. Another thing we do when talking about forums is sometimes we'll call a meeting, we'll call a forum, and we'll actually kick out the manager. So, traditional meetings would be whoever called the meeting, maybe the department, and then you look out to the other departments and you start bringing in different managers. What we like to do is say, okay, cool, that manager, their department is working on that task, but really it's going to be this one individual contributor that is going to be doing all the work. Let's kick out the manager. We don't need that middleman. Let's bring in this junior analyst. Sure, it may be a little daunting at first, but once he gets in there and he or she realizes that they're the expert in the whole room of, these senior level people, they're going to kind of run the show, and that's going to help everybody. They're going to directly bring the most knowledge and also, kind of boost themselves up the chain. Another thing that we like to do are think tank sessions. So, not unheard of, but a recent example is we rented out a room for a couple days here in San Diego. We took a few pieces from each department, and we brought a problem that we really didn't know the answer to. This wasn't just an exercise. It wasn't just about teamwork. We had a specific project that we're going to scope out for the next year. And we wanted to know specifically computer language we should use. If you dive into the computer languages, there's a lot of them. So they spent a couple different days, doing all the things that you just mentioned on the MIT survey. They did role playing, they wrote stuff down on flashcards, they played different processes all the way through. So when they got to the end, they had all come to an agreement we should be using this specific computer language, Java, for our next project. So that was super helpful, getting down to the basics of, like we mentioned, a child might do with his peers in a preschool class. They had a problem. They brought all the different steps together and they came out with a solution. Next up is, starting to not look at so much of the business ideas and some of the fun, some of the culture, some of the creative stuff. So one of the things that we've done in the past is called Spender of the Month. And I definitely recommend everyone try this. It's not going to last forever. It's not going to stick for years and years, but especially when kind of spearheading a culture initiative or kind of a fun program, when looking into the HR program, something like Spender of the Month works really well. You set a budget, it could be a couple $100, could be a couple thousand, depending on, how many people and what size you are. And then you draw a name out of a hat, simple as that. Or you come up with your own way of picking someone, but the idea is that it really is random, so that, the summer college intern could be running a monthly program for 100 people. they get a budget, they spend it however they want. It really brings people together, and more than anything, it brings different ideas. How many happy hours can HR run? How many trips can the manager of a department plan? Everybody does that, but bringing in the employees to kind of be hands-on really get some wanting to drive initiatives, and that kind of spills over from fun into real work. They see, hey, I threw this happy hour, I threw this event, it was successful, now I can run this meeting and I'll be just as successful. And then lastly, office environment. We have an open office here. It's not for everybody, but we have dogs running around. The big idea that we try to bring is we bring everything in-house and take out the external stressors. So, we bring in haircuts, massages, food, stuff like that, so that employees, when they're at work, they can truly focus 100% on work productivity. Also, when they leave, when they leave at 5:30, say, for example, haircuts, they've already gotten their haircut. They don't have to now go spend an hour or 2 hours on the weekend doing errands. They can kind of, get a 2-for-1 at work, and then they can really decompress. We find that nowadays, with how hard everybody works, that's the biggest challenge, getting employees to decompress. They work 8, 10, 12 hours, some of them, and then they go home and they think about it some more, and they come in the next day, they work some more, they're constantly thinking about work, but we need employees to kind of decompress and take a break. That's kind of
Awesome.
my thoughts there.
Awesome, Greg. I think I've never really thought about how sometimes perks really can address some of the culture qualities like that, right? You want people to feel comfortable at work. The other thing I think is really interesting and important that you mentioned for your first couple examples is the importance of empowering everyone in your organization to have a part of the innovation. It sounds like, kicking out the managers and letting some of your lower level employees, even the intern, have the opportunity to participate in this not only probably helps innovation, but probably helps collaboration and all of those other important culture qualities as well.
For sure. And one of the things that I tell people when I talk to them is, we've said it before, we say it often, and I try to get it out of our vocabulary, is everyone says, oh, we have an open door policy. Cool, everybody has an open door policy, but when you have, the CEO saying, hey, come on in, we have an open door policy, are your junior employees really going to feel comfortable knocking on the office and walking in and saying, hey, I have an idea to pitch to you? More than likely not. So you kind of typically have to force the hand a little bit. I mean, you can't push them all the way, but you bring them 3/4 of the way, and then you kind of hope that the ones that do want to speak up take that extra leap.
Definitely. And I'm also sure some people on the line are like, wait, we don't even have a pretend open door policy. But yes, makes sense. Okay, for the sake of time, let's move on to the next slide, which is a similar topic for encouraging new ideas. And this is more around turning failure into innovation. I feel like we hear a lot of the time when we think of innovation, we think of Google and Facebook and the fail fast mentality where you just need to learn from mistakes and really try something in order to see if it works. We see this a lot with the smaller companies we work with at CultureIQ, the idea of entrepreneurialism and agility and the ability to adapt quickly. But there are some ways to do this at a larger organization as well, because the importance, and this is what this quote gets at, if you're doing it to learn and you're doing it to improve, then it's worth doing. So a few of the key things here. So first, embrace the inevitability of mistakes. When everyone in Zeeto, I know at Zeeto you guys do this really well, which we'll talk about, but sometimes, like the open door policy, a senior leader might say, I want you to try new things and learn from them, but then you do something, it doesn't work out so well, and then it's reflected in your bonus or something like that. So it's really important to embrace mistakes as part of failure and to not blame your teammates or your managers shouldn't blame you. If this is going to be part of your culture, then it's important to create those behaviors around it. and then learning from mistakes. So like the quote says, if you're innovating to learn and to improve, then it's important to understand what are the lessons learned, what didn't go well for next time. And you can report on these failures, right? Like if a CEO or a leader or manager is wants to know, why did you try this and and is giving you a hard time or playing the blame game, then you can say, well, look at what I learned, look at the data, um, and here's how I'm going to report this out, and here's what I'm going to do to try next time. And then third, creating failure and promoting experimentation. This means that managers must ask employees to be brave and to speak up, and can't express anger or disapproval, or play the blame game when this comes up. So this takes the entire organization's support in order to have this fail fast mentality, but it really can yield the best innovation, as we've seen from some of these tech companies. And honestly, not even just tech companies, a lot of our Culture IQ clients in completely different industries, like construction or manufacturing, have been doing innovation extremely well. So just because you might not be part of a company that seems super innovative, based on what we, see in the news and what our society considers innovative, you really can be in any industry. But Greg, I know that Zeeto does this really well, so we'd love to hear some real life examples from you on the fail fast philosophy.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned, people don't like to fail for multiple reasons. Sometimes it's they just don't want to look bad. Other times it's their bonus, and I'll jump a very specific example for the bonus. So a couple of years ago, we noticed that, rightfully so, some of our media buyers, for example, they buy media, and their bonus was built on how much money they make. The more money they make, the more bonus they get. Makes sense. Happens all the time. Happens with sales and other departments as well. But we found that it was getting kind of stagnant. Our innovation was definitely dropping because they weren't incentivized to try new things. They may have an idea. I want to try this idea. I want to buy this piece of media, but I think it's going to fail. So I don't want it to affect my pocket personally and the company. So I'm going to stay away from it. And when you get in that mindset, you kind of go backwards. So what we did is we had to change the bonus plan. As simple as that. We had to say, 50% is going to be on how much money you make. The other 50% is going to be on how many new ideas you try. Something as simple as that, but it had to be pretty black and white, where we kind of forced them to fail. So we said, try 10 ideas. We don't care what the results are. We just want to hear a report on the results, on the ideas. What did we learn from them? And that was very helpful because, not only were they not scared of failing, they were kind of forced into failure. And we, here at Zeeto, we definitely learn more from what we fail at than what we succeed at. Because when you succeed, it's okay, that works, let's keep going. When you fail, it's okay, that didn't work, why not? And can we make it work? And if we're failing, and if every other company is failing at that, and we can make it work, that's just going to set us one step ahead. And then as far as feedback, communication, that's definitely a big one. We do a lot of surveys. We use things like SurveyMonkey, super simple software that can send out surveys, get feedback, both anonymous and not anonymous. But one thing I wanted to touch on is communication. So, everybody asks their employees, what do you want? What do you want to see? Do you have any ideas? Do you have any ideas that we should try out? And that's good. But I think that the biggest thing that we saw, and it was a flaw of ours, a couple of years ago, so we looked out to fix it, is you have to circle back to employees. So employee says, hey, I want to try this. Maybe you don't like it, but if you just kind of forget about it and don't implement it, they're kind of wondering, okay, I spoke up, but I never heard anything. So what we'll do is we'll attack it head on. We'll head right back to the employee. We heard you. That's awesome. Thanks for the idea. Here is why we're not going to use it, or here's why we're not going to use it right now, or here's why we're going to use it in a year. And we found that definitely empowers the employee to keep speaking up. They say, okay, awesome. They thought enough of me and my idea that even though they're not going to use it, they came back to me and told me why they're not going to use it. We've also had times where we went back to an employee and said, hey, we're not going to use this idea maybe in 6 months. And they came back and fought us and said, that idea won't work in 6 months. We got to do it within 2 if we're going to do it. And they got a chance to pitch their idea again in person. And there's been times where they were able to sway the different department into using it. And I think that's a big one where, HR really needs to drive that. If a manager is saying, we're not going to use the idea, or if they're not following up with employees, it's hard for a subordinate employee to speak up directly to the manager. So you take the manager out of it, you take the employee out of it, you have HR kind of run the survey, they kind of run all the feedback, and they can steer it in different directions so that both the supervisor and the employee have a kind of a neutral outlet to get their ideas to.
Fantastic. So just for our audience, when you mention that people pitch ideas, are they pitching these ideas directly to the CEO, or are they pitching them to a team?
Yeah, so we have, we're big on, let's get more information, let's overwhelm, with information. So, we'll do surveys that our CEO definitely looks at. We do specific department surveys where we'll send out a survey to the whole department, and we'll meet face-to-face with each employee. We'll take a summarized notes and meet with the managers. So we take it in-house in HR, our director of talent. We make sure that people are being heard. We kind of take that on us to make sure that the information can't die. We also do stuff like skip level lunches where someone from the C team, our CEO, CTO, CRO, will take someone else out to lunch that isn't directly either in their department or on their same level. They may be a level or 2 levels removed. They get to talking, it's super casual, but a lot of good ideas pop out of that, where someone can pitch something. It doesn't feel official. The employees don't feel like they're in a performance review pitching new ideas. They just feel like they're talking. So if they say something, that isn't appropriate or that sounds kind of dumb, it just kind of dies right there at the lunch. But, when a good idea comes out of it, maybe a developer pitches something to our CRO and he sees an opportunity to go make revenue. He's definitely going to implement it then. Whereas if that was pitched in a more formal way, maybe it wouldn't have made as much sense.
Makes sense. Thank you for elaborating. Okay, I see that we are running a bit low on time, so let's move on to the next slide, and we're going to talk about moving ideas through an organization, and this is where we see some of our lowest scores, even for companies that have high innovation. Their individual employees just don't understand how to actually move these ideas through their organization. So as part of our top company culture contest, which Zeeto scored highest in innovation, we found that 86% of employees believe that their company encourages new ideas, but only 75% understand the process. When people don't know how others will respond to their idea, this is what leads to some of the disconnect, right? So Greg mentioned the importance of communication and feedback. Even if an idea isn't going to be accepted or approved, the individual is told that, and they're told why. And like Greg mentioned, sometimes there's even some pushback saying, well, if we want to do this, we have to do it the next 2 months. So having a more certainty of outcome, knowing that you're going to be listened to, even if the idea isn't going to be taken, is really powerful. So the next slide, a few key things. First, okay, make sure the process, investments, and incentives are designed. Greg gave a fantastic example of how they completely redid their incentive system in order to facilitate and kind of, I like when you said force failure. That makes a lot of sense. Second, identify the best evaluators of new ideas. So you also mentioned, Greg, that you have HRs looking at ideas, teams are looking at ideas, the CEO is looking at ideas. Some of the things that research has shown is that actually having fellow innovators think through ideas is helpful because they're used to thinking about innovation in that space. And also using your customers. So Whirlpool is actually a fantastic example. So They're extremely innovative. I just read a Harvard Business Review article on them. But they ask themselves every year, did the products that get rated as highly innovative actually yield above average returns? Or do the employees just think that it's cool, right? So checking those metrics and seeing what's actually working for your customers is a great evaluator of good new ideas. Third, gamifying the process. Gamification is a hot topic now. We hear about it all the time, but the idea of hackathons, right? If you get everyone together in a room without distractions and you really throw everything on the whiteboard, you're going to get better results and better ideas than doing it via email when people are distracted. I read another really good example that I want to share, which is Right Solutions Mutual Fund. So I thought this was so cool. So basically, they spread their idea approval process across the organization by creating an idea market. I'm putting this in air quotes on their internal website, and it worked like a stock market. Every employee was given a few $1,000s in fake money to invest, and those ideas that had the most investment were actually implemented. And they found this to be extremely productive in terms of coming up with innovative ideas. And actually, it ended up accounting for 50% of their new business growth in the first year of doing this. And they're still doing this mutual fund stock market today. I thought that was pretty cool and really costs no money to implement on your intranet site at your company. And then fourth, establish accountability. Greg mentioned that when Zeeto hired their CTO, they got everyone involved. They realized how important of a position that was. And when you think about your organization, who is accountable for innovation? And is it the managers? Is it a CTO or a CEO? Sometimes it is helpful to have someone formally accountable for innovation. So next slide. And we'll hear a bit more from Greg, and then we'll close it out for some Q&A.
All right, I'll try to keep it quick. I realize we're running low on time, but some of the ideas that Zeeto is definitely independence is probably the biggest one. I mean, hiring the right people, keeping the right people, keeping them happy is kind of the whole idea behind all the fun stuff and the perks and everything I do. The fake stock market one that Rea just mentioned is awesome. I may have to steal that one. All that stuff it's all about keeping the employees happy. But on their end, they need to get their job done. They have to be able to work independent. That's just how the job market is these days. So giving the employees everything they want, all the freedom, all the tools, and just kind of hoping that they, hit their productivity marks. Communication and transparency, we kind of talked about. One of the things I want to quickly touch on is that we found that it works really well for us is a weekly lunch and learn update where our CEO or one of the other C-level members gets up for about 10 minutes. We try to keep it standing, keep it quick, so it's not a big time suck, but he gives a quick update of the top 10, 5-10 things that is going on at Zeeto. So everybody hears that from the whole entire company. And the main thing is we go over financials. When I first came here, which is about 5 years ago, and I started hearing those financials, I was kind of surprised. Being in HR, you're privy to a lot of info, but I was kind of surprised that we were releasing that out to everybody and kind of had to win me over because I was getting concerned. Okay, what happens when we have a down month and everyone freaks out and thinks, we're going under and they're going to look for another job? Or what happens when we have a good month and everyone's going to ask for a raise or think they want to share that bonus, not taking into account that just because we brought in a lot of revenue, there's a lot of built-in costs and stuff like that. But we found out that it works great. Both the financials and the main goals, just spreading them out, throwing them out there and be like, this is the truth. This is what you would hear in the boardroom. Mentoring and training, every company, that's a big one. You hire good people, but you need to continue to grow big people. So, or good people, excuse me. So we have an executive consultant that comes in. We have some of the C team, like I mentioned before, try to reach across departments and find ways to spread their knowledge and kind of build junior talent and kind of move them into a more senior role. And then resource allocation. So one of the biggest questions I get is, don't employees wouldn't they rather have the money themselves, rather than having free meals or massages or haircuts or something like that? And the answer is, in the short term, probably. Employees say, hey, what if we did this? What if we got a raise instead of doing this program? But at the end of the day, we're trying to keep up with, Google and Facebook and everyone up in Silicon Valley, and we're in a tech industry. So to attract the best people, we have to provide an amazing workplace, and that's kind of where we've decided to put our resources towards the culture and the people. And at the end of the day, the people are the ones that's going to make this thing grow and has made this thing grow. So that's where we decided to put the resources.
So I have a question. If I get
Sure.
a bad haircut, do I get my money back?
Everybody laughs if you get a bad haircut.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing about the haircut, but about everything else as well.
Sure. Glad to be here.
All right,
Okay,
so I think
so now on to Q&A. And Greg, there's a question for you regarding the Spender of the Month program. A listener is interested in hearing a little bit more because they're interested in trying it out, actually. So any additional details you could provide would be great.
Sure, I'd love to. It all stemmed, I'll give a quick on how it came about, is that, HR puts on events and it gets hard to please everybody. So when one person wants to go to a Padre game, for example, somebody hates the Padres. It's hard to please everybody. So we said, okay, let's put it in the employees' hands. So we started really small when we were at about 30 people. I think the budget was like $300. We would say, okay, who wants to put their name in the hat? Almost everyone did. And then we would draw out a name. Okay, Susie is this month's Spender of the Month. Susie has $300 to either buy something for the office or to go on an event. So, we had a lot of different ideas. We had one month where a guy was really into brewing beer, so he bought an office brew kit so we could brew beer at the office. Super cool. We did a in-house sushi making class where one time someone hired a sushi chef to come out and bring all the supplies and teach everyone how to roll sushi. We've done, kind of more traditional happy hours or bicycling events, all kinds of stuff. We kicked around all kinds of ideas, but as the company grows, the budget has to grow with it. But yeah, it's a real fun idea, and it just gets all kinds of different perspectives. So one of the quieter guys was really into ping pong in the office, and he never would push everybody else to have a monthly ping pong thing. But when it was his turn and he won, he set up a ping pong tournament and had food catered in. So that kind of thing. Hopefully that answered the question.
Great. And Greg, there was another question. Do you have different programs for exempt and non-exempt employees due to tax and overtime implications?
So we try as much as we can to have our events during work hours. For one, it's going to get much more attendance. So, we'll usually do kind of a two-part event where we'll say, there's an in-office happy hour from 3 to 5 p.m. Anybody that is working from 3 to 5 p.m., exempt or non-exempt, if you attend, that counts as working time, so you're paid. And then we say, from 5 to 7, we'll go out to, go to an event around downtown, and that is unpaid time. So both are voluntary, but that way, people that can only afford to stay till 5 p.m. and that are paid by the hour would still get paid and be able to join in if they wanted. And also they can join in the extra activities. So to answer more simply, no, we don't. We try to make it work for everybody, but it definitely can be a challenge.
Fantastic, thank you. And another question for you, Greg. Could you provide some more details on the Think Tank? That's another program that some listeners thought was intriguing.
Yeah, so we were in San Diego. Coronado is about 10 minutes away from our office, one of the world's nicest beaches, super awesome. So we went to a hotel, got a really good deal during the week, and we kind of just took about 15 people down there. And our CTO, he's done it a bunch of times before, so he really knows the process. But he basically said, okay, we have 3 days to get our answer. And the question was, what programming language are we going to use for this year-long project that we're going to build. So I'm sure there's people that know a lot more about development than I do, but from what I do know, it's even just the planning process is months and months. So there was a bunch of built-in challenges already. First of all, how do we even set up the process to ask the question and get it answered within 3 days? But that could work for any example. You just we threw 15 people. We kind of had the CTO, who was the leader. He kind of stepped back and he said, "Here's the question, guys. Go get it." Alluding back to the MIT problem of throwing a bunch of bricks and asking some kids to build a house. That's basically what it was. It was, you guys are going to drive this thing. You guys are going to be the ones that are working on it for the next year. So, we want you to come up with the answers. And really, it's all about having people there, being encouraged to speak up. It was offsite, so there's no distractions. It was, this is our main and only goal for the next 3 days. So let's get everything out in the open.
It's similar to the hackathon idea, right? Like, if you can't do a 3-day thing, you could do 1-hour thing at your office and just get everyone together with no distractions and be like, we're gonna come up with this, whatever the answer is within this set period of time.
Definitely.
If you had to do it on a smaller scale, yeah.
Right. I mean, we've talked about doing more hackathons in our office, and a lot of our employees will participate in ones, especially up in the Bay Area. But yeah, super cool. I mean, even if it's not a development or a tech hackathon, I think it's just the idea of it, of having just one problem, get rid of all the other work or distractions, and just kind of come to a solution is super helpful.
Definitely.
Any final questions here? Rea, I know that you might have
had a question I had one for you, Rea. I wanted to get your thoughts on using metrics, because I know it's, culture, people always say, how do you define culture? What are some of the ways that Zeeto or another company could better use metrics on kind of a simpler level to start and deciding? A lot of people ask, I think we have a good culture, especially in the HR space. I think we have a good culture, but I'm not really sure how to measure it.
Yeah, great question. And metrics and analytics is so important these days. We have ways to measure everything, including culture. But especially when you think about innovation, a lot of so I know Jamie mentioned this in the beginning, but what CultureIQ does is we have a software that helps measure culture based on 10 core qualities and also based on some strategic dimensions. But not to get into that, but basically some of our dimensions are around innovation and agility. And when you send a survey to your organization, and you're able to cut data by demographics, you're able to really learn about the different areas and see which departments, which locations are more innovative in terms of, are people willing to question the status quo? Are people willing to speak up to their manager? Do they feel comfortable in front of senior leadership? Do they feel like people are listening to them? These are all questions related to innovation that can get a pulse on how your organization is functioning in terms of innovation. And those numbers and that data can help when you want to pitch a CEO or a senior leader, because we all know that C-suite executives want the numbers, right? They want to know how their employees are engaged in that area, because as we know, more engaged employees are more productive employees. So I really think data can have an extremely powerful impact on these conversations around should we be doing more for innovation.
Okay, cool.
Great.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I know one of the challenges that we have is when we interview certain developers, they're coming straight out of college into a Google, Facebook, tech world where it's a little different than it was. So, the Facebook is the norm where you come in with everything free. So we say, hey, we have this awesome culture, and they say, okay, show me. And so that's one of the things that we struggle with, is getting that into metrics. So yeah, that's something we could definitely utilize.
Yeah, and how cool would it be to be able to show during onboarding, let's say, what the culture looks like at Zeeto from a strategic perspective. Like, are people, like, how do people normally communicate with each other, for example? Are they more direct? Are they more passive? It could be a pretty cool thing for onboarding.
For sure.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Rhea and Greg. That's actually, we're right on time here finishing up, which is amazing. And everybody who attended will be receiving an email with the recording as well as the slides. So if you don't, feel free to reach out to me directly, Jamie at cultureiq.com, and I'll make sure that I get that to you. It should be coming by tomorrow. All righty. Well, thank you, everybody, and have a great rest of the week.
Thank you. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, guys.